Shabbos Daf Samach Vav begins with a Mishnah and has a Mishnah in the middle. We'll start with a Mishnah which lists three different types of appliances that people who are crippled used to use to get around and what their halachos are concerning Shabbos, carrying and wearing as shoes and being makabel tumah. Then we'll have another Mishnah which lists a couple of different objects which people may or may not wear on Shabbos and they have medicinal properties, and the Gemara will list a number of different incantations and cures which people can use to heal themselves from various conditions. We begin with the Mishnah at the bottom of Daf Samach Hey. The Mishnah discusses various different devices which were used for people who had amputated leg or legs. Now, the issues are these things that they used. Were they counted as shoes, or were they counted as supports, cushions to rest on, or were they counted as ornaments, or were they counted as something that he's carrying? Depending on which halachic status these things have, that will influence what their halacha is as far as carrying it on Shabbos. Of course, wearing it in the Beis HaMikdash, a shoe is forbidden to wear inside the Beis HaMikdash, and whether or not they are mekabel tumah. Now, there are three types of people with amputations which we'll be discussing. One is somebody who has one foot amputated. One is somebody who has both feet amputated, but he can still use the stumps to walk on. And the last one is somebody who really has no functional legs at all. And they all have different devices. Then we're going to go to the Gemara, which will have a discussion as to what the first two opinions are, a lengthy discussion. So let's begin. The Mishnah says somebody who has one foot missing part of the foot, so he has a wooden peg leg which he has inserted on the end of his leg instead, meaning he has a cup surrounding the stump of his leg and a wooden leg that comes off of that. So it's a machlokes Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yosi whether he's allowed to wear it outside in the street on Shabbos. The Gemara is not clear which one holds that it's mutter, which one holds it's asur. Our Mishnah has a version that Rabbi Meir says it's mutter and Rabbi Yosi says it's asur. What's the issue? The issue is, does it count as a shoe or not? It's made out of wood. Shoes are usually made out of leather. So if this counts as a shoe, he's allowed to wear it. If not, then he's not allowed to, unless it counts as an ornament. Now, this thing had an ornamental value. The cripple didn't really walk on it. It was hiding the stump of his missing foot. Now, if the cup was also made to hold rags to cushion his foot, then it's also mekabel tumah because it is wooden and it has a base kibul, it has a convex area to hold things. The fact that it holds his foot doesn't make it mekabel tumah because one doesn't hold a foot. The kli doesn't hold the foot wears the kli, so it's not called mekabel something. Okay, the next type of cripple is somebody who's missing both legs, so he would walk by means of resting on the shins or on the stumps of his thighs, and he needed crutches as well. So he had leather supports that were put on the bottom of his leg stumps so that he could rest on them. And those things, the Gemara says, do not count as shoes. You're allowed to wear them inside the Beis HaMikdash, but they do count as cushions that you rest on, and therefore they are tomei tumas midras, meaning it's considered like a chair that you sit on, and those things are tomei if you rest on them, like a zav. Okay, the third case is somebody who has really nothing in the leg area, and he has a little chair that he sits on, and then he kind of swings himself forward while using crutches with his arms. He also has leather straps that are also strapped on because he sometimes tilts forward and rests on whatever he has left of the leg there. So what's halacha of these two things? So the chair he's not allowed to wear on Shabbos because it could fall off and he'll end up having to carry it, or somebody will have to carry it. And the leg straps he can't wear into the Beis HaMikdash because those count as shoes. He doesn't rest on them. They cover his foot and they're leather, and therefore they count as shoes. Okay. Then at the end, the Mishnah adds in something called lukdimin are forbidden to wear in the street on Shabbos. The Gemara will define them. Rashi here says that it's a mask which you use to scare little kids. Okay, I guess people used to do that back then as well. And now the Gemara wants to know, Meir and Rav Yosi, one of them says that the cripple is allowed to have the peg leg over his stump. This is the first case. One says mutter, one says asur. Which one's which? The Gemara says Rav asked Rav Nachman, who said what, and what's the halacha? And Rav Nachman said, I don't know. But Shmuel said the halacha is that Rabbi Meir says asur, and Rabbi Yosi says mutter, and Rav Huna says that way as well. And Rabbi Yosef said when he heard from Shmuel, he agreed. Rav Meir says Aser, Rav Yossi says Mutter. Now the Gemara says no. It's not true because Rav holds the other way. So why would Rav Yosef agree to Shmuel? Shmuel learns that way, but I'll show you a story which shows that Rav holds the other way, and therefore Rav Yosef should hold like Rav. What happened? That the Talmidim came to Rav and they said it over Shmuel's way, and Rav signaled to switch the opinions. It's the other way around. So Gemara says you can even remember that. There's a mnemonic, because Rav Yossi, who has a samach in his name, says Aser. So that's how you remember Rav's opinion. So now the Gemara says, yeah, that's what Rav holds. Not only that, but Shmuel and Rav Huna actually changed, and they accepted Rav's approach that Rabbi Meir is the one who says Mutter, and Rav Yossi is the one who says Aser. Where do you see that? So about Shmuel, because there's a Mishnah that discusses chalitza. Chalitza has to be performed with a shoe. So the question is, what if you use a wooden shoe? So there's a Mishnah that says that it's mutter, and Shmuel said that that's Rabbi Meir, who says that a wooden object counts as a shoe, and therefore you're also allowed to wear the wooden, this cripple, is allowed to wear the wooden stump in the street. So you see there that Shmuel says that Rabbi Meir is the one who said mutter, Meir mutter, and Rabbi Yossi said aser. Rav Huna also changed his opinion. Rav Huna was talking about a different kind of case. He was talking about somebody who sells lime or plaster, which is hot and can burn his feet. So he wore a protective shoe over his regular shoes, which was made out of straw. The question is, what is the halach of that thing made out of straw? It's not regular shoe material. Does it count as a shoe or not? Very similar to our case where you had a wooden shoe, and the question was, does that count as a shoe or not? So over there, we have a contradiction between a Brisa and a Mishnah. The Brisa says that Rabbi Akiva, well, they all say that Rabbi Akiva says that you're allowed to wear them in the street on Shabbos, and it counts as chalitza, and it's mekabel tumas medras, meaning it counts as a shoe for all its halachos. So in the Brisa it says that the Chachamim did not agree, and they said no, a shoe can't be made out of straw. That thing was made out of straw. A shoe can't be made out of straw, so it's not a shoe. And in the Mishnah it says that the Chachamim did agree. So which is it? So Rav Huna said, some Chachamim, Rabbi Meir is the one who agreed that it's a shoe, and Rabbi Yossi is the one who disagreed that it's not a shoe. So you see clearly Rav Huna holds, like our original version of Rav, that Rav Meir is the one who says that it is a shoe and therefore it's mutter, and Rav Huna says it's not a shoe, and Rav Yossi says it's not a shoe and therefore it's forbidden. Now, the Gemara adds in here that there is another person who did not agree with Rabbi Akiva, who Rabbi Akiva had said that you can't have a straw shoe. It's Rav Yechanan ben Nuri. We have a Mishnah where he says that anything made out of straw, Rabbi Akiva says they are makabel tumah, and Rabbi Yechanan says they're not makabel tumah. So you see that Rabbi Yechanan ben Nuri would also say that the straw shoe in the Mishnah is not makabel tumah's medrash, and he would disagree with Rabbi Akiva. Now the Gemara says that how could you count a shoe that's made for protection as a shoe that's makabel tumas measures? It's not made for walking. It's not something you rest upon. It's made to protect your shoe. So Gemara says, Rav Ula answered, you could. It is a shoe because the worker uses it to walk from the work site to his house, and therefore, in some extent, it is considered a shoe. Okay, the Gemara now refers back to the Mishnah and comments on several phrases of the Mishnah, phrase by phrase, before we get to our next Mishnah. So the first thing we have to discuss is the subject of the wooden foot, which is fitted onto the stump of the real foot, and it contains a receptacle for rags. And the question is that we had seen in the Mishnah that if it will do that, it is mekabel tumah. The question is, what kind of tumah is it mekabel? Is it tumas medris, which is something which supports weight? If it supports weight, then it's mekabel tumas medris, which can become a tumah even if it's not touched. Or is this not something that supports weight, and therefore it only is mekabel tumah by contact? So Gemara says it's a machlokes between Rava and Abaye. Rava says is mekabel tumas medris. It is meant to support the weight of the person who's wearing it, because even though it's primarily an ornament, sometimes he walks on it. And it's just like a wagon that a child uses that sometimes he rides in, and therefore it's mekabel tumas medris even without contact. Abaye, however, says no, it's not makabel tumas medrash. It's like a walking stick, a cane that an old man uses is not makabel tuma, that we know, even though sometimes he leans on it. So this thing also is not makabel tuma, even though sometimes they will lean on it. Now, how do they each answer the other one's proof? So Abaye says you can't prove anything from a child's wagon because the child uses his wagon often to ride in this thing the cripple rarely uses to walk on. And as far as Abaye's comparison to the walking stick, Rava says it's not comparable at all. The walking stick does not really hold all his weight, he just leans on it. But in the case of this thing, the cripple will step on it fully, and that's why it is makabel tumas medrash. Okay, next part of the Mishnah was the leg straps of somebody who sits in a chair. He's missing both legs, and he sits in a chair to move himself forward. So what's with those leg straps? So the Gemara says that somebody said over a brisa to Rav Yochanan that those leg straps, one is allowed to wear them in the Beis HaMikdash, which indicates that they are not shoes. Rav Yochanan says it can't be because I learned that you're allowed to use them for chalitza. So obviously they are shoes. So you have to change your version. Okay, now the last thing we saw was that luktimin are not makabel tuma. You're not allowed to wear them on Shabbos. What are luktimin? So they are some type of performance article that's used in an entertaining act. The question is what? We have three opinions here. Rabbi Yevo says they are like a donkey that people, it's like a fake donkey that people wear, and it looks like they're riding the donkey, but it's really strapped to their shoulders and hanging between their legs. Rava Bar Papa says that they are stilts. And Rava Bar Rav Huna says that they are masks. Okay, now we get to the next Mishnah. The Mishnah lists two more items that people are allowed to wear in the street. So first of all, it says that young boys are allowed to wear a certain type of knots. The Gemara will explain what they're for. And people are allowed to wear an ornamental type of a bell, which is common that princes wore. Okay, allowed to wear these things. So now the Gemara says, first of all, what are these knots? So the Gemara's first opinion is that they're knots of a plant called pua, which are traditionally hung around the neck to cure or deal with disease. Now the Gemara discusses a number of different healing-related halachos. First of all, we're going to explain what these things are and how they work, and then the Gemara will quote a number of other halachos about the subject. So Abaye says that these knots of this plant, so if you have 3 knots, so then that makes sure that a disease you have doesn't get worse. If you have 5 knots, it heals. If you have 6 knots, if you have 7 knots, it even keeps away kishuf, types of witchcraft. Now the Gemara says, how do you use these things? Rav Acha bar Yaakov said you have to be careful with them because if they're exposed to the wrong things, they lose their restorative powers. You have to make sure they're not exposed to sunlight, moonlight, rain, or the sound of metal knocking on each other, or to the sound of a rooster crowing, or to the sound of people walking. Any of these things will ruin the power of these knots. So Nachum Bar Yitzchak says, and therefore it's useless because you cannot possibly keep it away from all those things. Now the Gemara says, hold on a second. If these knots refer to this plant, so then what does it have to do with boys? It should apply to everybody. It should apply to girls as well. It should apply to girls, it should apply to adults. Why is it a boy thing? So Gemara says, no, it's a different shot over here, and this is Rav Avin Bar Huna, the name of Rav Chama Bar Guria. It's an important name because all the other halachas which we'll see coming up are going to be in his name as well. He said that this is used for a son who's missing his father. Machlok is Rishonim exactly why he's missing his father. He's leaving, or he's sick, and they're afraid he's soon going to die. Either way, the solution to a boy missing his father, which is a special type of missing, which doesn't apply to girls, the solution is that the father takes a lace from his right shoe and ties it on the boy's left arm, and that solves the problem. Just like tefillin, and that's how you remember how to do it right, and you have to remember to do it right because if you do it wrong, you take a strap from the left shoe and put it on the right arm, then it'll make it worse. Now the Gemara says a number of other halachas from Rav Avin Bar Huna named Rav Chama Bar Guria. This is concerning Hilchos Shabbos. We know you're not allowed to use medicine on Shabbos because it's a concern. You may come to make a powder and grind up plants. So other types of healing which do not involve chemicals are sometimes permitted. Now the Gemara is going to list a number of different things which are permitted. So first of all, he says you're allowed to put a hot cup on a person's navel, on the stomach, on Shabbos. That helps cure intestinal aches. Next thing is you're allowed to smear a mixture of oil and salt upon a person's hands and feet, on the soles of the feet and the palms of the hands. That helps cure drunkenness. The Gemara quotes an incident about this, where it says that when Rav Huna came from the yeshiva of Rav, he was often drunk. And when Rav came from the house of Rav Chia, he was often drunk. And Rav Chia came from Rebbe, he was drunk. And what the Rebbeim used to do is before they left, they would smear this oil and salt on their soles of their hands and feet, and they would say, just like the person's heat is thinning out this oil, let it also thin out the wine. And if they didn't have oil and salt around, then they took the clay from the seal of a barrel, put it in water, and said, just like this clay is thinning out, let the person's wine thin out. Next halacha, you're allowed to do a type of healing called strangling on Shabbos. What was that? That was somebody who had a vertebrae in his neck out of place. They hung it from his head, and that snapped it back into place. Next halacha, you're allowed to swaddle an infant who has his limbs are bent out of shape because of the birth. You're allowed to swaddle him in order to straighten them out. And now the Gemara has a machlokes here between Rav Papa and Rav Zvid, who said this last halacha. Was it Avin bar Rav Huna, name of Rav Chaim bar Guria, like we said so far, or was it Rabbi bar Bachana? The Gemara now presents several healing mechanisms which Abaye learned from his adoptive mother, and the Gemara will also insert a brisa with some other information here. So first of all, Abaye mother said that anything which you say to heal people, there were a series of chants or incantations which you used to say to heal people. Anything which you say, you should include the person's name with his mother. You don't include the father's name, you include the mother's name. And any knots that you tie on for healing have to be put on the left arm. And anything which has to be repeated a number of times, if it says the number in the incantation, then you should repeat it the number of times that it says in the number. Meaning you should listen to the incantation that has the number in it. Now you have a brisa. The brisa says that a woman is allowed to wear a special type of stone called even tekuma. This was something which was supposed to ward off miscarriages. The Gemara doesn't describe it, but Rishonim say it's either a stone with another stone inside, or it's a ruby or a diamond. Anyway, so you are allowed to wear this stone in the street on Shabbos because it has a function. You're not carrying it. It's being worn, and it's meant to keep the miscarriages away. Not only are you allowed to wear the even tekuma, but the same properties apply to something which was used as a counterweight of an even tekuma, which means it has the exact same weight as it, and therefore that also has these properties. The Gemara says if you used that counterweight and got a different counterweight for that, so that also has the same weight, does that apply to there? The Gemara is not sure about. The Gemara leaves that unanswered. Now the Gemara says this halacha is true. You're allowed to wear this even if she never had a miscarriage before, but she's just afraid she's going to have one. Even if she's not even pregnant, but she may become pregnant and not be aware of it. Okay, now the Gemara has other things from Abaye's mother. Abaye's mother said that if you have a fever that comes back every day, so there are three potential cures for this. Number one, you need to take a brand new zuz and get salt in the exact same weight as the salt and tie it to your neck opening of your shirt by a strand of hair. If you can't do that, then go find an ant. Go to the intersection of the streets, find an ant who's carrying a very large burden, and capture the ant in a copper tube, close it with lead and 60 different seals, and then shake it and say to the ant, you take my burden, I take your burden. And the ant will have the sickness, and he'll have the thing that the ant was holding. So the Gemara said, hold on a second. Rav Acha, son of Rav Huna, said to Rav Ashi, what if the ant already has somebody else's sickness on it? I guess you release the ant afterwards. So then what? So the Gemara says, okay, so don't tell the ant, I'll take your burden, just tell the ant, you take your burden, and you take my burden also. Okay, and if you can't do this, then what you should do is go to the river, take a small new cup made out of clay, and fill it up with water, and say to the river, river, give me a cup full of water so that I could heal what's happening to me every day. And then you twirl it around your head 7 times, turn around backwards, throw it into the river, and say, river, take back your water and take back my disease. This things that happens to me every day. Then we'll continue with more cures on the daf tomorrow.